This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
It's a great pleasure. Listen, I always enjoyed your play and your antics. I'm not going to lie, as a guy who likes drama. And I'm glad you called us today. Thank you so much. Daniel Carcillo on the program. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, brother. How are you doing?
I'm good. Where? I don't even know where. So where are you residing now? Whereabouts do you live? I'm
in Chicago, Illinois.
So you just like after you figure you won a couple of cups, I imagine you're a bit of a hero in that city. You're like, I'll chill out where I'm a hero. Is that what you decided?
Hero or public enemy number one. It just depends how you want to look at it. But it was more so a question of where I was going to lay my roots, because my wife is from here and her parents are here. And she didn't move away from home at 16 like I did and travel and live in another country. So I think the decision was pretty easy. Oh,
awesome, dude. Happy to hear that. Nice that you live in, where your wife's from. That's important, being with family. Where were you born? I don't even know. You're just out somewhere in Ontario, right?
Yeah, so I'm from King City, Ontario. Just 40 minutes north of Toronto. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yeah, you're right near Wonderland, right? Like, you're close to Wonderland, no?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just one exit north of Major Mac. So I was just there recently for a family wedding, and how it's changed.
Yeah, lots of growth. Let's be honest, growth everywhere here. Well, listen, we might as well get right to it, dude. Listen, you had a great career, and I know there's public enemy number one stuff you can say, but I like guys who showed some vigor and some heart and passion, and at times of explosive behavior. But that's the sport, and it won you a couple of cups and got you in some trouble here and there. But whatever, such and such. How many years did you end up playing, Dan?
12 professionally, about 9.5 in the NHL.
So, pretty significant stuff. But since the game, you've sort of, and I guess I don't want to say you've done a 180, but you're really on the game, meaning, hey, are you Bettman, are you the NHL and everyone associated with it, and really on every level, are we protecting the players? I think that's your overall message. So what's your story?
So my story is I watched my friend Steve Monador die at 35 with CTE throughout his brain, florid and extensive, and I was very close to him. I watched him for a year and a half struggle. He had 10 keys for the same deadbolt, and I just won't stand for it because the same type of stuff almost took my life, and anxiety and depression derived from repetitive head trauma and a career where nobody ever diagnosed it or cared for it, and we didn't even hear the word concussion. It's just not acceptable. So I'm a guy that's just trying to tell the truth and raise awareness for parents and raise awareness for current players, and raise awareness for people that want to get into collision sports, and they just need to know the real risks. And in 1940, there were a couple recommendations made in the NCAA handbook that said 3 or more traumatic brain injuries, and you should seriously consider stop playing collision sports. We fast forward to 2013, and the Blackhawks cleared my friend for 4 concussions in 12 weeks. So where's the disconnect? And I know where the disconnect is. The NHL is no better than Big Tobacco in hiring their own doctors to push industry science. And that's what's happening, and that's what continues to happen. Now, I know that not a lot of people are privy to this information, but I think more and more people are starting to understand what the mission is, because the last 3.5 years have been extremely difficult for me. And there's been a lot of anger and frustration and sadness, and I think that came out early in the message. And I'm just an aggressive person. Like, that's just my nature. And when I fight hard. And that's no different in real life. And if I passed away and Steve was still here, he would be doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, educating people on really what the real issues are. And one of the biggest issues is that there's over 70% of the doctors who made the 2016 Berlin consensus statements in sport on concussion, 70% of them have strong relationships to collision sports leagues. So who are we supposed to listen to? And why don't they make recommendations like they did in the 1940s? So there's just a lot of questions, and I would like to make people aware of this so that strictly it's not about saving hockey because I don't care. It's not about changing rules because I don't care. It's just about having people, parents, kids, current players sign on the dotted line to make sure that they have informed consent. That is the only reason that I'm doing this. And then I want it to spill over into the veteran community, first responders, firefighters, police officers, and really anybody that's been dealing with mental health or mental illness their whole life. Because at the core of our healing is neuroregenesis, and that's something that nobody else talks about as well, right, is that you can get better. This isn't a death sentence, and I don't treat it that way. So, at the core of this mission, that's exactly what it is, just to let people, inform people so that when they sign on the dotted line, then there's no long-term liability for the league, and it works really well for everybody if everyone knows the risks and then they sign off on it.
Listen, man, first off, I got to say, Dan, it was like supremely well spoken and a message that I think is important. And, you can hear the tenacity in your voice, but, in a calm approach when people, they respond to that kind of seriousness of it, but not the anger behind it. And like anything, you get in a fight with your wife, you gotta, you can have a serious tone, you get an angry tone, all of a sudden you're the bully here. This is an important message you're spreading, and one that I'm really impressed you are not afraid to take on a community that's pretty tight knit, and of course wants to keep things kind of in the closet, so to speak, for the good of the game and really for money. And that's what it all comes down to. Everything in life comes down to money, but really it should come down to health and protecting people. And I think the one word, the only word really didn't say, Dan, when in that eloquent speech, much better than I'm doing right now, is really accountability. And accountability on both sides, where you're right. Parents sign up their kids and they know what they're getting into. They know the contraindications and they know the repercussions. And then there are leagues saying, "Hey, listen, we're going to make money at this, and everything's profit making, even in the minor leagues. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. And hey, but these are the risks. But yet we're going to monitor it and police it as best we can." Do you think? At what point, what's the balance is what I want to know. Because, obviously I'm a hockey nut and played, AAA for a couple of weeks. And to be honest, at 14, my dad sensed it got too violent for me because I was a skinny kid and pulled me out and I went skiing. And my point being is that can we find a balance to keep this sport going where we really are, and I mean this, man, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your life of your friend, and I'm sorry to hear that you went through these, depression issues and anxiety and substance abuse, dealing with your injuries and your brain injuries. Can we find a balance to make for the good of the game and the good of people?
Yeah, you just tell them the truth. You tell them the truth, and the science has to come from people that aren't affiliated with the sport, and then sign on the dotted line. And that science hasn't changed. CTE was described as dementia pugilistica back in 1930. 1930, man. Punch drunk. That's what CTE was. 1930.
Unreal.
Just tell people. Like, seriously, just tell people. Tell the guys, NHLPA, where the heck are you? Where are you? Wake up, Fair. Wake up, Matthew Schneider. Your job is to protect players, right? So why do I have this information and you guys don't? Where is the disconnect? So literally, man, the way that you save the game is you tell players, because I guarantee you, hockey players, they will still sign on the dotted line.
Yep.
All right? Okay, so that's it. It's pretty cut and dry. Like, it's not rocket science. And then what we're going to ask when these new statements come out and these signatories sign on the dotted line, we're going to ask publicly that you tell us your biases. Tell me who's paying you so that I can make an educated decision if I want to listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth. Right? So, and that's it. And it's pretty simple, pretty cut and dry. You want to put your kid in? Go ahead. The games, they've done a lot. They've moved up the age of hitting, which is great, because the only thing that protects us against concussion is the strength of our neck muscles. That's the reality. Seeing it, so training your peripheral vision, and then the strength of your neck muscles. It ain't no helmet. It's no mouth guard. It's not a cue collar that mimics what woodpeckers do. It's none of those things. It is just seeing it and being able to tense up your neck muscles in order to stop that violent shift in your brain. That is it.
I mean, listen.
If you know that, then great. Then go ahead, sign up.
First off, I was super high in Muskoka a couple years ago, and I was watching a woodpecker go at it, and I'm like, dude, that guy, like, that's unreal. But then I studied the woodpecker after, and they had this little. No, I couldn't believe. Look at that guy go! I couldn't believe it. It's crazy.
Isn't it crazy that these concussionologists, right? Like they modeled a product to restrict blood flow to your brain, thinking that it's going to help protect you. Just think about that.
It's insane. It's insanity.
But it's really not. But it's not that crazy when you look at the names, and then you look at their affiliations. Right? It's all industry-led stuff. Right. So
this was a lot like this is similar to, I guess, what that Will Smith movie Concussion. That movie was based on a lot where really that league was also ignoring and still I think continues to sort of ignore the issues that come with post game and injuries and CTE and really at the end of the day sort of like dementia and depression and sadly in a lot of times these fuel tempered brains that either commit sadly some crimes or take their own lives. It's really very sad. It's very, very sad. And where are we at with you, Dan, and your message, which man, and I want to talk to you off air because I got a project I'm working on that I would love to figure out a way to get you involved in, and I'm serious. And it has to do with the fungi medicine, which I want to talk to you about after too. Dude, where are we at? Where are we at with this message? Are there people kind of going, okay, we got to get on Dan's team here because you know what? He's right. And we know it. And we don't care about perception. And we don't care the contacts or the connections we're going to lose or sponsorship dollars. We just got to do what's morally right.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that are starting to come to me wanting to help. But really, like you said, right, that hockey community, it's its own world. It's not real life. And it's really nobody from the hockey community that makes a livelihood because if anybody joined up with me, then they'd be in the same position that I'm in, which is blackballed, right? Which you have to expect, you have to expect that when you don't toe that company line.
Yeah.
So, do I need help? No. Do I want to team up with people that, for the right reasons and for the right cause? Yes. Is it hard to find those people in the brain injury world? Extremely. You really have to sniff people out because it's a $2 billion industry. So I'm very happy doing this on my own and showing my own healing so that people can hear the message the way you did, right? It's not my anger and frustration. It just comes out of a place of concern and really, love for wanting to protect kids and children and teenagers and really my friends, man. My friends who are still playing in that league. I feel so bad for them, because protocols won't be changed until these lawsuits get settled. And I really don't see a way that they come out of the first lawsuit unscathed, So hopefully, at some point in the future, in the next 5 years, because Steve's isn't the only lawsuit, then there's mine, and then there's Nick Boynton's, and then there's the Bugard estate. So they're going to be fighting former players for several years. And I really believe that nothing will change as far as protocols because then that's an admission to guilt, So if hopefully, I just keep doing what I'm doing. And, I've been contacted by numerous people, and for me, when you help somebody, it doesn't need to be made public. But lots of guys are walking away from the game and choosing their life over the game, And so that's not what I want to see happen, but I think they're smart decisions. I really do.
Yeah, and back to the NFL too, Dan. We're seeing that too a lot too. Where guys, you look at even Gronk and these young quarterbacks. Even what's his face from Indianapolis? They're just like, we're out. We made your money. We're out, and why are we going to risk our future? And let's start with your healing and how. I mean, first off, are you doing better? How many concussions did you have? Do you figure in your career?
7 documented.
7 documented. And then how many fights would you have been in your career?
I think it's over 100.
Just over 100, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you were tough. Oh, man. I would get nervous watching you. And you know, through my TV screen. But you know, you're a tough guy, and that was something like, listen, you were one of the, like, you know, I like to say, you know, for me and radio, like back in the day, I was kind of one of the best of the bad. You know, we were kind of encouraged to be like shock jockey, and I didn't think of the perception that would have for me in a career, to be honest, either. Like, very separate. You know, my brain's okay, but were you? I mean, part of your role is to be, you know, like encouraged to be like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell this to people, right? Like, I viewed hockey as a job, and that was my job.
Yep.
One of my jobs was to protect my teammates, protect myself, and be able to change the momentum of a game with a fight or a hit. That was my job. Wow. Straight up, you know? And, you know, from the NHL emails that they love to sell rivalries, hate, violence, right? I don't know if you've seen those, but that's what Colin Campbell has been quoted as saying. And they did a really good job with guys like Don Cherry and all of their subconscious messaging in Rock'em Sock'em. The first thing he'd say is, you listen up now, kids. Right? And I did. I listened really well. And I continue to, you know. And that is how they bred young children and how they subconsciously bred us to be animals. Like, my nickname was Car Bomb on the ice. I am the furthest thing from a car bomb off the ice, right? So why did I play that way? Where did it all come from? Well, it stemmed from the sexual, physical, and verbal abuse that I sustained in Sarnia as a fucking minor, you know, and then it continued throughout my whole NHL career because I used the game of hockey as an emotional release. And you can see that, right? You're like, Dan, geez, why are you such a psycho out there, you know? Like, that's not you off the ice. You're totally different. Well, I mean, it was just a lot of undealt with trauma that I was expressing. You know?
So Dan, sorry, and I had to dump the swear. I can't swear on this channel. It's weird. We're on Sirius, but we got these weird regulations. So, and I just, because you said something that I didn't know, and it really saddens me to hear. The abuse was on what levels?
So, I mean, it's pretty well documented after that St. Mike's story. When I was 16 and moved away from home, 13 of us were sexually, physically, and verbally abused throughout the year for a good year and a half in Sarnia.
Oh, man.
And so, like, now, so you talk about healing, right? And now I can look back on my career, and I can understand why I had the nickname Car Bomb. I understand why I played like an absolute savage. And I understand why I enjoyed it, because
it was a release.
Hockey. Yeah, it was just strictly an emotional release for me. It was a job. It was subconsciously drilled into me that I was allowed to do that. It was within the rules.
Yep.
And then there were things that happened to me along the way, like all the coaches negatively talking to you and negatively motivating you, and you having to walk on eggshells. It's a very fear-based society. That's how they motivate, which is totally twisted. But that is how I lived my life up until 6 months ago, man, until I finally busted out of that with a big handful of mushrooms. I woke up, you know, and thank gosh I woke up, you know, because now I can look back on my career and really be thankful. And I say this in all sincerity, like, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Bill Daly. And thank you, thank you, Mr. Fair, and thank you, Schneider, for everybody just collectively doing such a bad job at protecting hockey players and human beings, you know, and creating this culture that helped me wake up. Because now I can see the bigger picture. Now I can see all the programming, right? I can see everything. And now it's about waking other people up, you know, just lightly nudging them. Hey, you know, just like I'm doing with you right now. Hey, you know, there's a lot more going on that either fans don't want to see, right, because they love the game so much, or they don't want to hear it because it's too painful. You know, they don't want to see us. They want to look at us as demigods. They don't want to look at us as some injured, you know, 25-year-old kid, you know. So it all plays together, man. You know, it really does. And I will not stop talking. And there is a huge opportunity to be able to educate. And if the hockey community and the culture, doesn't want to change, well, I guarantee you what's going to continue to happen is parents aren't going to sign their kids up and put them in that culture. Because as parents, we're just supposed to make our kids feel loved, safe, and secure. And if I sign my kid up for hockey right now, I know that's not going to happen.
Well, that and coupled with the parents that think, the hockey moms, the hockey dads that think their kid is the next great one and nonstop pushing on through other, negative reinforcement. And it really is insane when well, it's I laugh at this stuff. Oh, dude, it's nuts. I got a 4-year-old, but I got buddies with 8, 10, 11-year-olds. And even in house league now, they got to play 4 games a week, travel across the city. It's crazy. It's and the statistics show, Dan, that it's greater. It's easier to get into Harvard than it is the NHL. Why aren't we pushing that direction?
That's what I want to say. I want to say something to everybody. You're in Toronto, right?
Yep.
Let me talk. Let me say something to you parents. 0.001% of your kids will make a paycheck playing the sport they love, not just hockey. Okay? So, just put your son or daughter first, and if you think that they need to train 12 months of the year because Hockey Canada's brainwashed you into thinking that's what needs to happen, I trained for 6 months, played, practiced. My parents never signed me up for one power skating class, never, ever. And then I did 6 months of soccer, all right? And I had a pretty decent career.
2 cups, so I'd say it's okay, Dan.
Yeah. If your kid wants to apply himself, he can do that in 2 or 3 practices, and just look around. There's rinks everywhere. It is big, big, big business, So just, again, it's like you're poking these parents. Hey, buddy, wake it up. You're getting sold a pipe dream that ain't going to happen. So wake it up. Focus on some other things.
Man, I love candidness, and I'm really respectful of your message, and I get. Man, I get this, and I get what you're saying. I'm conflicted, though. And this is the thing that I want to be honest with you at. I'm conflicted as a fan and a guy who's 46 or grew up in the rough and tough days watching it that way, hockey being played on a certain level, and me being a diehard Maple Leaf fan and looking at the lack of toughness on the team. And it does, that's the weird part is, should it be conflicting fans? Should we be more compassionate?
No, you're brainwashed too.
Huh.
Why shouldn't you be conflicted? I'm conflicted sometimes. I don't watch hockey anymore, but the odd chance that I catch 2 or 3 minutes of a game, it's ugh, I don't want to watch this. There's no passion, but that's the way it is, and I just don't see us clawing back from that, given all the data that's about to come out. Tomorrow on my social media, I'm going to make a post about these 3 magazines that I read. One's from 1984, one's from 1934, and one's from, I believe, 1941. And they make recommendations, about brain trauma. And I think we need to understand what climate we're living in, the cultural climate, that everybody has an encyclopedia in their hands and everybody has an opinion, right? And everybody really, they call people out any chance they get. And so I think you can get down with how informed people are. So now they're just much more reticent to not wanting to see a young man knocked out cold after a bare knuckle fight on the ice, and now they're going to talk about it because now they have avenues to be able to talk about it. And it's okay to be conflicted, man. I totally understand it. Trust me, because there's a part of me too that says, well, man, this is brutal, but that's just because we're brainwashed. We're brainwashed into thinking that that's the way the game needs to be played, to be able to have it be enjoyable. Do you really need to see guys suffering? Hockey's hard enough, man. Hockey is extremely hard, and you're going to be in pain after a game. That doesn't need to be exasperated by getting punched in the face with a bare knuckle and taking hits when really the other guy doesn't see you coming. Like, I get it. The way the game was played when I grew up, the reason that we liked it, you take that player's will to want to touch that puck away. And that starts in warm-up. That starts with looking in his eyes. And if he breaks eye contact, you have him. As soon as he hesitates, guess who else sees that? Their bench and our bench. And then we lean on him.
Yep.
Right? We make everybody quit. That's not the way that the game is taught. And now it's 12 months of the year. They have people convinced they need to be stick handling with their head up. And the game is about what? Goals, right? So that's the way the game's taught now, which I don't think it's a bad thing. But it's just different. And I think that the NHL holds on to this, like fans like you, they're pleasing fans like you and other fans, which isn't a bad thing because that's their gravy pot. But, I mean, really, is it working? Why is escrow still above 10%? And escrow means players are paying back the owners at the end of the year. Why is that?
Yeah, and the game, as much as people who love the game, it hasn't grown like other sports have, and still, in America hasn't really captivated a larger TV audience that we would think it would. Dan, only because only because I got to expedite this, but dude, I want to get you back on, like, even within a week or two, man. Like, I could talk to you all day long. You mentioned something earlier about mushrooms, and I assume you mean magic mushrooms with psilocybin in them of the psychedelic variety. Something that I'm carefully endorsing without making any health claims, but am a big believer in as well, and for the reset and for helping with depression, because I read nonstop about it. I'm actually getting into an industry and a business that has to do with it, a company that I even want to take public one day, which is what I want to talk to you about. But tell us about your experience with them.
Yeah, so that's at the core of my healing. A former teammate knew I was struggling, invited me down to a farm, and we did a hero dose. And ever since then, my life has never been the same, and it's never been better. And I've won 2 Stanley Cups, and I've been at the pinnacle. You're supposed
to say you got married to the love of your life here, Dan. I just want to add that.
Yeah. Well, that was next. Okay. Married to the love of my life, and I've got 3 amazing, healthy, beautiful children.
Oh, I love it.
And like you hear a lot, my experience with psychedelics saved my life, and so I have to put it at number 1. It is the most special experience that I've had because it saved my life, and I don't know if I'd be here without it. That's how dark it got for me. And so at the core, right, after researching all of this brain health stuff, at the core of our healing, I want to speak now to people that might be suffering from TBI and might be scared that they're going to get this neurological disease because all these organizations, all their grants are stipulated on how much fear they can provide the public, And what I want to say is healing is possible, all right? 6 months ago, before I knew I was going to do this, for some reason, my higher power made me do an EEG, and it did not look good. And that's what kind of kicked off the anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation spiral. And now, since I've been on this protocol after the mushroom experience, and then introducing inflammatory plant medicines, anti-inflammatory plant medicines, and mushrooms like lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, turkey tail, these mushrooms that have been shown in double-blind placebo studies to break up amyloid protein, the same amyloid protein that causes these neurological diseases that I'm at risk for, and that anybody I'm talking to, if you've been hit in the head repetitive times, you're at risk for it too. That is what helped in my recovery, and that is why my EEG came back 2 weeks ago with no abnormalities. So I have healed myself, and I did that by reading and by wanting to get to the root cause of my problems and not using Big Pharma's model of minimizing my symptoms with a daily pill.
Hey, Dan, I'm just so happy that you're seeing these results for you. And, I'm a big believer of this space growing, and we're seeing a lot of companies now, 38 clinical trials going on between Canada and the United States on what psychedelics could do. Some big investors getting into the space, like a Peter Thiel and stuff, or Thiel. And I know some people who are really studying, and you mentioned big pharma, and you talk about the NHL in a certain way with its sort of money and protection of a league, and kind of maybe at the end of the day greed and not caring so much about humans like we should. That's what I've always felt with for big pharma. I've been off any prescribed medication in I don't think I've taken even a Tylenol in 15 years. Maybe a couple of Advil after a real bad drink at night. But but I think the next big wave, and I've said it here on the show, and I really believe this, because sadly the youth have been witnessing what's going on with the opioid crisis, and the benzos that people are getting addicted to now, and dealing with big pharma greed. In my opinion, that their next protest, we're seeing it now with climate change, is going to be against these synthetic produced drugs that really are making people worse. A lot of them, not better. And granted, there's some drugs out there that are helping cancer patients and things like this, but exploring what this earth has given us, and we're seeing it with cannabis, even though you still can't make true medical claims yet. All the studies are going to that, but the next big wave, I'm convinced, is the fungi and what it can do for you. And it's something I'm going to put a team of people to do a lot of research into as well. We need to talk further, and most importantly, man, like I said, I'm really impressed with people who are candid, people who are honest about their story, and people who have had a hardship, quite frankly, and have gotten over it. And I'm happy to hear you're doing well for you, for your wife, for your kids, and really to spread a message now, man. It's like these things are weirdly meant to be sometimes. Keep spreading a great message, my friend.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, and I just want to mention I'm going to be up in Canada February and March for a speaking tour presented by, in partnership with Ducky Brand Apparel. They're a mental health organization. So, I'm excited to come back and just and share my journey, and hopefully, continue to help people.
Listen, brother, anything we can do when you're back here, too, to help promote that with Ducky Brand, please, having, sadly, for us, we experienced suicide in our family just 2 years ago. Anything we can do. And I am going to reach out to you personally, man, because I want to get you on board something we're doing.
Please do.
Okay, man.
Thanks for having me on, brother.
Thanks for sharing the story. Continued success in your sort of rehabilitation and feeling good and spreading a message. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
Okay, two-time Stanley Cup winner Dan Carcillo spreading a message post-hockey with his really just a very moving interview. And I think something that everyone who loves the game as much as I do and is conflicted as much as we are at times. I'm the first guy to tweet, the Leafs need to be tougher. And then you hear that and you go, my goodness, we got to take care of human beings.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.